We should have gone home. We should have turned the car around the second we saw the parking lot empty, too empty. But we didn't. Because Walmart is always open. Because nothing bad ever happens in a store full of security cameras and fluorescent lights. Because we thought the worst thing we'd deal with was a long checkout line. We were wrong. It was 11:48 p.m. when we pulled into the lot. The store sat under the glow of a few scattered streetlights, its huge blue sign buzzing with faint static. There were only 3 cars in the lot. One was ours. One was an old, beat-up pickup truck parked near the entrance. And the last? A white van with no license plate, sitting at the far edge of the lot, facing the store. Engine running. I should have paid attention to that. But at the time all I cared about was getting in, grabbing our groceries, and getting home. The automatic doors slid open. The store was silent. Too silent. No customers. No registers beeping. Just the distant hum of the refrigerators. And at the entrance, standing too still, too stiff, was the greeter. An old man in a faded blue vest, his name tag reading Jim. His face was expressionless. His eyes locked onto us the second we stepped inside. "Welcome to Walmart," he said. But his mouth didn't move. I forced a smile. Thanks." Sophie, my wife, gave me a weird look. We moved past him into the store. And as we walked away, I heard it. A sound I shouldn't have heard. The greeter whispering. Not to us. To someone else. They're inside. Sophie and I split up. I went to grab drinks and snacks. She headed toward the produce aisle. The store felt too big, too empty. The lights were bright, but the aisles? Too long. Too quiet. It felt like we were the only ones in the entire store. And then, the intercom crackled to life. A voice echoed through the speakers. "Attention, shoppers. The store will be closing in 15 minutes. I frowned. Walmart doesn't close. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Of course. I glanced around. Still no employees. Just the greeter standing at the front, motionless. I shook it off. Maybe they were short-staffed. Maybe this was just a weird night. But then, over the intercom, the voice spoke again. Same tone. Same flat, robotic delivery. "Attention, shoppers. Please do not run." What the hell? I turned the corner into aisle 12. And I saw him. A man. Tall, too tall. Standing at the far end of the aisle, half hidden behind a shelf. He was dressed in black. No cart. No basket. Just standing there. Still. Watching. I gripped my shopping basket. Took a slow step back. And that's when Sophie appeared. Rushing toward me. Her face was pale. Her hands shaking. "Liam," she whispered, "we need to leave. Now." I grabbed her wrist. "What happened?" Sophie swallowed hard. I went to the bathroom," she whispered. "And there was a woman inside, ***. She was standing by the sink. Not washing her hands. Not looking in the mirror. Just standing there. And when I stepped up to the sink beside her, I saw it. In the mirror. She was smiling. But her reflection wasn't. And then, in a voice that didn't sound like hers, she whispered. "You shouldn't be here." I grabbed Sophie's hand. I didn't care if we left the cart. Didn't care about the groceries. We headed straight for the front doors. Fast. Not running because of the intercom warning. But walking too quickly. And then, the intercom crackled again. "Attention, shoppers. The doors will not open." I froze. Sophie squeezed my hand. And then, I saw him. The greeter. Jim. Still standing in the same spot. Still staring. But now he was grinning. And in a voice that was no longer flat, no longer robotic, but hungry, amused, and waiting. He whispered. "You're staying." And behind us in the aisles we heard it. Footsteps. Coming from every direction. The footsteps were getting closer. From behind the shelves. From the dark aisles. From every direction. Sophie's hand tightened around mine. Her breath was shaky. Panicked. And Jim, the greeter, was still standing at the front. Still grinning. His teeth were too white, too straight. Like dentures that didn't fit right. And then, in that same voice, he whispered. "The doors won't open." And the lights flickered out. Darkness swallowed the store. Not dim light. Not shadows. Total blackness. I heard Sophie gasp. Heard the footsteps stop. And then, a voice. Not from Jim. Not from the intercom. A woman's voice. Soft. Breathy. Like someone standing way too close to my ear. "Found you." I spun, swinging blindly. My fist hit nothing. But the air was wrong. Thick. Hot. Like breathing too close to someone's skin. And then the lights flickered back on. And we saw them. They weren't shoppers. They weren't employees. They were standing too still, dressed in normal clothes. But their faces, something was wrong. Their mouths were stretched too wide, like their jaws had unhinged. Their eyes were empty, hollow, and they were all smiling. Every single one of them, smiling too hard, too forced, too wrong. And then, they moved, all at once, straight for us. I yanked Sophie forward. Didn't care where we ran. Just knew we had to move. We bolted down aisle 6. Behind us, the smiling people followed. Not running, not screaming, just walking fast, closing in. Like they already knew we wouldn't get out. We turned the corner back toward the entrance. And stopped cold. Because Jim was still there. But he wasn't Jim anymore. His Walmart vest was ripped down the middle. His neck, too long, stretched like something inside was pulling it upward. And his face was peeling. His skin hung in loose, gray sheets like wet paper dissolving. But his grin was still there. And in a voice that wasn't human anymore, he whispered, "No running." And then, his jaw unhinged, completely, a black, gaping hole where his throat should have been. And from inside it, something crawled out. Sophie screamed. I grabbed her, yanked her back. We turned and ran. Didn't care where. Didn't care what rule we were breaking. We just knew. We couldn't let it touch us. We sprinted down the frozen food aisle. The glass doors were fogged over. Something dark moved inside them. Not reflections. Something else. Something inside the freezers. We kept running. And then, I saw it. The fire exit. A red glowing sign above the doors. I grabbed Sophie's hand. We ran for it. And then, we heard the wet crunch. The sound of something tearing open. We turned the corner. And saw why. The meat section wasn't meat. The packages were moving. Twitching. Some of them bursting open from the inside. Raw flesh peeled apart. Exposing teeth, bones, and too many fingers. Hands. Human hands. Pushing against the plastic. Like they were trying to crawl out. And then one of them did. A hand. Gray. Rotting. It tore through the plastic, grabbing the edge of the shelf. And then, a face pushed out next. Twisted. Unfinished. A half-formed thing gasping for air. Its mouth stretched too wide. Turned toward us. And in a voice that sounded like Jim but wasn't Jim anymore, it whispered, "Clean up in aisle 7. I yanked Sophie forward. Run! The smiling people were still coming. Walking at that same steady pace. Never stopping. Never blinking. And the thing in the meat aisle? It was still crawling out. His body half human, half wrong. Like it had been growing in there for years. We hit the fire exit. I slammed both hands against the bar. It didn't open. Didn't budge. The red exit sign flickered. And then changed. The letters shifted. Morphed. And then, glowing bright red, they formed new words. No way out. A breath hit my neck. Soft. Cold. I turned. And saw a security camera mounted above the exit. But it wasn't a camera anymore. It had an eye. A real, blinking eye staring down at me. Blood vessels writhing in the lens. Watching. Recording. And that's when I understood. Walmart doesn't close. Because Walmart is alive. It eats people. Keeps them inside. Uses their bodies. Fills the freezers with them. Turns them into workers. Turns them into shoppers. Turns them into meat. And now, it was our turn. I grabbed Sophie. We had one chance left. We had to hide. Had to find a way out before we became part of it. Before we became something else. And behind us in the aisles we heard it. The smiling people laughing. Because they knew. We weren't getting out. Not alive. The fire exit wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I slammed my shoulder against it. No matter how many times Sophie pulled at the handle, it wouldn't open. It wasn't locked. It just wasn't meant to open. And the people were getting closer. Their footsteps steady, unhurried. Like they already knew how this would end. Like they'd done this before. I turned, scanning the store, heart hammering. We needed a hiding place. We needed time to figure out what the hell was happening. And then I saw it. The employees-only door. Back near the stockroom. If we could get in there, we might have a chance. I grabbed Sophie's hand and pulled her with me. We sprinted past the aisles. Past the checkout lanes. The smiling people turned their heads to watch us. None of them ran. None of them called for help. They just watched. And smiled. We hit the employees-only door. I shoved against it, locked. Sophie yanked at the handle, nothing. Then she spotted the keypad. "Shit," I whispered. We didn't have time to guess the code. They were getting closer. Then, a voice behind us. Low, shaky. A whisper. "Over here." I spun around. A man was standing near the restrooms. Mid-40s, disheveled, wearing a Walmart vest. Eyes wide with fear. He gestured frantically for us to follow. Sophie hesitated. I didn't. I grabbed her wrist and ran. We pushed through the bathroom door, and the second we were inside, the man locked it behind us. He was breathing hard, his hands shaking. "Who the hell are you?" I whispered. He swallowed. I work here. Or, I used to." Sophie's eyes widened. "You mean, you've been here this whole time?" His expression darkened. He didn't answer. The bathroom was dimly lit, grimy. It smelled like stale mop water. The man leaned against the sink, rubbing his face. "I saw you come in," he muttered. "I figured you wouldn't make it out, so I—" He shook his head. "They don't like when people try to leave." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean, they?" The man let out a hollow laugh. "You think this is the first time?" His eyes flicked to the door. "You ever wonder why this store is so short-staffed? Why there's never more than 2 cashiers? Why half the workers are gone the next time you come in?" He met my gaze. "They don't quit." I felt a cold chill crawl up my spine. "What happened to them?" He took a shaky breath. Then, in a quiet voice, he whispered, "They're still here." A loud beep. The intercom crackled to life. A cheerful voice filled the store. "Attention, shoppers. A special deal is happening in the back warehouse. Please proceed through the stockroom doors for assistance." I turned to the employee. He was shaking his head. "They're lying," he whispered. Sophie's breath hitched. "What happens if we go back there?" He didn't answer right away. Then he swallowed hard. "I don't know. Nobody ever comes back." A loud metallic clunk. The bathroom lights flickered. And then, down the hall, the stockroom doors slid open. By themselves. A long, dark corridor stretched beyond them. Dimly lit. Empty. And then, a shadow moved inside. Someone was waiting. Someone standing just beyond the doorway. The voice on the intercom repeated, almost singing now, "Shoppers, please proceed to the back warehouse." Then, footsteps. Not from inside the store. From the bathroom stalls. I turned just in time to see a pair of shoes stepping down from the toilet. And then, the stall door swung open, and something stepped out. The stall door creaked open. The sound cut through the silence, sharp and slow, like someone was pushing it open on purpose. Sophie grabbed my arm. The Walmart worker held his breath. And then, a foot stepped out. Bare. Pale. The toenails were blackened and cracked. A second foot followed. Then, a body. The man standing in front of us was wearing a Walmart vest. Just like the worker beside us. But this one, he wasn't right. His skin was too pale, almost gray. His arms hung at his sides, limp. His head tilted slightly as if his neck was too weak to hold it up. And his eyes. They weren't looking at us. They were looking past us. Like he wasn't really seeing us at all. Like he was looking at something we couldn't see. And then, he smiled. Too wide. Too forced. Like his face had forgotten how to make the expression. His lips cracked. A line of blood dripped down his chin. And then, in a voice that was too dry, too slow, he whispered, "Break time's over." And he stepped forward. I grabbed Sophie and yanked her toward the door. The Walmart worker, ***, the one who was still alive, ***, fumbled with the lock. The dead employee kept walking. Slow. Steady. His arms dangled like dead weight. But his legs moved perfectly fine. Like his body wasn't his anymore. Like he was being controlled. And then, he opened his mouth. But no words came out. Just a low, gurgling sound. Like something was moving inside his throat. Like he was trying to speak with someone else's voice. And then, from behind his teeth, a second tongue curled out. Not his. Not human. Sophie screamed. And the bathroom door finally burst open. We ran. Straight for the stockroom doors. They were still open. Still waiting. And beyond them, a hallway that didn't make sense. It was too long. Too dark. Like the store was bigger than it should be. Like it stretched into somewhere else. The Walmart worker grabbed my arm. "Don't go in there," he panted. I looked behind us. The dead employee was still coming. Still walking toward us. Slow. Smiling. And behind him, the others were coming too. The shoppers. The ones who had been watching us. Their smiles stretched too wide. Their eyes empty. And then the intercom crackled. Stockroom open. New employees arriving. And I knew it. We had no choice. We ran into the stockroom. The second we stepped in, the doors slammed shut behind us. I turned, no handle on this side. The only way out was forward. The hallway stretched ahead of us, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. Shelves stacked with boxes, supplies. The air was thick with something rotten. Like spoiled meat and bleach. And then, a voice. From deeper inside the stockroom. "You're not supposed to be back here." A figure stepped into view. Not one of the shoppers. Not one of the employees. Someone else. A man in a dark suit. No name tag. No uniform. Just a long, black suit and polished shoes. He was clean. Too clean. Like he didn't belong in a place like this. His face was expressionless. His eyes sharp. Unblinking. And when he spoke again, his voice was calm, but final. "You need to start your shift." The air in the stockroom felt too heavy. Like we had walked into somewhere we weren't supposed to see. Sophie grabbed my hand. "What do we do?" she whispered. I turned back. The stockroom doors were gone. Not locked. Not hidden. Just gone. And then I noticed the wall beside me. Framed photos. Rows and rows of them. Like a normal employee of the month wall. Except these were old. The frames were dusty, cracked. Some of the photos faded beyond recognition. Some of them blackened, burned at the edges. And then, I saw one I recognized. The Walmart worker standing beside me. His face younger. His name printed neatly at the bottom. Hired, 2007. No end date. I turned to him. His face had gone pale. His hands were shaking. "How long have you been here?" I whispered. His breath hitched. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because I saw his hands. His fingers. The skin was peeling. Just like Jim's. The man in the suit stepped closer. "You're here now," he said. His voice was calm, steady. Like this was already decided. Like we had always belonged here. Behind him. The boxes shifted. Something moving behind them. Not a person. Something bigger. Something breathing. I took a step back. "No," I whispered. The man in the suit smiled. Not wide. Not stretched. Just knowing. And then he reached into his jacket. Pulled something out. And held it toward me. A Walmart vest. With my name already on it. And behind us, the intercom crackled one last time. "Welcome to your first shift." And the lights went out. The lights went out. Total darkness. The air shifted. The sound of breathing filled the stockroom, not ours. Something big was in here with us. Moving. Waiting. And the man in the suit was still there. Holding the Walmart vest with my name already stitched onto it. "Put it on," he said. His voice was calm, patient. Like this was already decided. Like I had no choice. I turned to run. Pulled Sophie with me. The Walmart worker was already backing away. We pushed through the rows of boxes, shelves stacked too high. It felt like we were in a maze. Like the stockroom wasn't built for humans. And then, a flickering red light appeared up ahead. A neon glow. A sign. We reached the end of the aisle, turned the corner, and stopped cold. It was a break room. Or at least, it used to be. Old vending machines. A dirty microwave. And in the center of the room, a table. Surrounded by employees. Not new ones. Old. Rotting. Their Walmart vests were faded and stained, their skin gray and peeling. Some had no lips, just exposed teeth in a permanent grin. Some had fingers missing, arms too long, bones poking through. And all of them were staring at us. Waiting. The red light flickered again. We turned. Saw the neon sign hanging on the wall. A manager's note glowing bright. And it said, "Employees must remain on shift until terminated." And beneath it, a list of names. Hundreds of them. All crossed out. Except for 3. The last 3. Ryan Morgan, the Walmart worker. Liam Carter, me. Sophie Carter, my wife. Our names were already written. Not in ink. Not in marker. In blood. Ryan, the worker who saved us, staggered back. His breath came fast. Panicked. I can't be here. His hands went to his vest, gripping it like he could tear it off. And then, he froze. His fingers locked up. His face went blank. And in a voice not his own, he whispered, "End of shift." Then, he collapsed. His body crumpled to the floor, limp and empty. Like something inside him had just been turned off. And his name on the wall? It crossed itself out. All on its own. Sophie screamed. I grabbed her hand, yanking her toward the exit. We had to go. Had to find a way out before our names were crossed out too. But then, the floor shifted beneath us. The break room door slammed shut. And the employees around the table? They started standing up. One by one. Moving toward us. Silent. Unblinking. Still smiling. And then, through the intercom, the final announcement came. A voice that sounded like Jim but wasn't Jim anymore. Attention, shoppers. Your shift is about to begin. And the lights went out again. I don't remember how we got out. I just remember waking up. At home. In our bed. Like nothing had ever happened. Like the entire night had been erased. No bruises. No blood. No proof. Except for one thing. Our Walmart receipt. Dated for last night. With no listed items. Just one printed line. Employees cannot quit. Sophie and I left town the next day. Moved 3 states away. No forwarding address. No trace of where we went. We thought we were safe. Until last week. I checked the mail. A Walmart flyer was waiting for me. No return address. No barcode. Just one line in bold red letters. Welcome to your first shift. And at the bottom, a photo of me and Sophie. Standing in the store. Wearing our Walmart vests. Smiling. And behind us, the man in the suit. Still watching. Still waiting. And now, we're next.